video.
We've had weddings that have taken place here, believe it or not. One of my coworkers actually, she got married here.
That's very nice.
Yeah, it's just a nice.
One of your stories. I pray for you. You're welcome.
Show you guys where I work. Right across the way is the communication studio. I don't know if you're familiar with ANN Adventist Network that airs on the channel. That's where we film the program. So you see that green curtain kind of squished in the corner. Pull the curtain all the way. Or news@adventist.org, do public relations, media relations, graphic design. We plan community outreach events. So yeah, that's what we do. And
Do you go to the South School, the South School?
No. I was a Pathfinder, definitely, when I was growing up. So this was,
I'm a master guide.
oh, nice. This was put together, as you may assume, by the youth department. They have these different displays to showcase the different ministries that they have. So automatic different camporees throughout the years and all over the world. In the Americas, in Asia, and Europe, and Oceania. Director of Education, Associate Directors. This is where they work. We also have youth department here, women's ministries, family ministries, stewardship, communication, health. What else is on this floor? Publishing, Adventist Review, Adventist Chaplaincy Ministries. Nice to work. If you kind of bend down, you can see that little blue book called the Bible Story. You may recognize the book, but he was responsible for the artwork. He didn't write the book, but all the artwork was done by Harry Anderson. He passed away in '96, but his family was gracious enough to loan us his workstation and some of his tools and like original paintings. And on the wall, you'll see some more of his work that you may be familiar with. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can come through. No problem. Before we get there, right here are other paintings of artwork done by Harry Anderson. Yeah, this was like cradle roll or something. Yeah, definitely. I never knew who did it, but I definitely remember seeing this one. So now we're entering the whole channel. It's the newest addition to our building. It's about 5, 6 years old. It's the official broadcast network of our denomination. They're actually filming a program right now. Let me get out your way so you guys can take. Yeah, we could put people on the meeting. Do you guys have any? Well, I know you said you have 2 girls. Anybody else have kids? We have this Bible that Mark Finley used. So this is a copy that Mark Finley used. He traveled the world, and like the final stop was a General Conference session in Atlanta. So what makes this Bible different is every book of the Bible is in a different language. So theoretically, every place it traveled to, the people can read a book of the Bible in their native tongues. So to give you examples, like Exodus is in there. I'm pronouncing that world. So I can show you the list here.
Maganda, ang daming bulaklak.
No?
Yeah, this was displayed by you.
I saw that in the general conference. I was in the general conference.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Asian? Artificial
Okay.
eye?
I don't know.
Oh, cool. What? That's cool. Yeah, this predates 2010, predates my time here, but it's awesome.
That's who I was telling you about.
Nice. So here, see, we have a relative of one of our former secretaries, but here you see portraits of all of the administrative secretaries of our conference in chronological order, starting with Uriah Smith, leading up to our current secretary, G.T. Booth.
It's the glare from my son.
His Office of Archives, Statistics, and Research. You know, keeping tabs on the research and, making sure we have accurate account of our history. So also Adventist mission is under this as well to help spread the gospel and to help share our message as a denomination. We also have what's called IP. We do have a greeting that that's been prepared for our visitors, so you'll see it in a few seconds.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry.
Looks like it's not working at the moment, so.
Presidential area. Although I can't be here personally to greet you, I'm delighted that you're going to be able to take a virtual tour of the President's office. My work involves a lot of activities right here in the office, committees, meeting with people, trying to focus on plans for the future, but that's only about 25% of the time. About 75% of the time, I am visiting in other parts of the world, in our 13 world divisions and our attached union. There are so many wonderful things that God is doing through members. I'm listening, I'm watching. It is an exciting thing to see what God is doing to prepare His people to give a wonderful proclamation that Jesus is coming soon. This office welcomes colleagues, interested people who need to share something with me. It welcomes ambassadors. It welcomes church members. It welcomes students. It welcomes prayer groups. This office is really your office. Behind me, you'll see a number of items that have been collected from around the world, and they remind me of our great world family. I'm so glad you're here and that you're taking a tour of this world headquarters of your church. God bless you as you spend time here in the Washington, D.C. area, but most of all, may He bless you as you personally witness for Him and are part of the great mission of sharing the soon coming of Jesus Christ and the three angels' messages to everyone around us. God bless each one of you. Maranatha.
Yeah, we saw a bunch of them in,
That's President's Capital.
okay. Twice a year. Busy time of year. All right, so let's head this way.
Go in the conference room.
We can?
Oh, anytime, if the door's open.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good
Okay, so over here, as I mentioned before, we have such a global presence. You
can take one of those.
So when
Thank
our
you.
president Byington was elected in 1863, it goes in chronological order from left to right, all the way to our current president, Ted Wilson. You'll notice the same last name with Neil Wilson and Ted Wilson. They're our only father-son presidents that we've had in our church's history. They look like. Mm-hmm. May have heard news. He was was the former president of the Euro Asia Division. See, he comes from, I don't know, from Mexico. Take a step inside and yeah, the presidential college. Yes. They are. Well, no, these are the general vice presidents, but you're right. They are also officers. The presidents of divisions are also considered vice presidents. But these six are general vice presidents. Right. Mm-hmm.
Presidential conference room.
It's something will be.
I mean, I guess if it's over
Because our
lunchtime.
local churches, usually when there is a meeting, they always serve when they're discussing.
Mm-hmm.
But here, do they practice that?
I'm not sure,
You're
but
not sure.
Yes, I can't speak confidently, on that.
That's the first day. It's the first day.
Oh, where did you get that?
I went in.
Oh, yeah.
Heritage.
That was so scary. Because it's kind of old and creaky. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's head back the way we came.
Yes.
Okay, so this is our final stop in this tour. This is the Department of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty. So their main goal is to advocate for the freedom of conscience, the freedom of belief, religious belief for everybody, not just Seventh-day Adventists and not just Christians. God gave us the power to choose, so we don't believe it's another man, woman, or government's role to impose a certain religious belief on another person. So as you can kind of get a glimpse, just like scanning the pictures, we have developed relationships with the White House and with political leaders here in Washington, D.C., and also the United Nations. We have a liaison at the United Nations. You can see here, Elder Ted Wilson met with Ban Ki-moon. This is the first time our president has met, or a president from our denomination has met with the Secretary General of the United Nations. We have this department has 3 directors. The leadership of the department is as follows. So you have Ganoon Diop, who is the director of the department. You have Dwayne Leslie, who is the associate director of legislative affairs, and Nelu Gorchka, who is our newest associate. He is the United Nations liaison. We have about 800 people who work in this building. Oh, don't have any. Excuse me, sir. First year of our church, that was about 3 years ago. So if you feel like you need to brush up on your Adventist history, feel free to read these displays after the tour, so after taking down Ellen White State. So you'll have plenty to do after our tour. You can check out Eden to Eden, the paintings, you can check these displays out. It's totally something. Glare's too much. Back before we pen down. So the original drafts per se started here. So this was like the original concept of the way of life. All of our Adventist theology depicted in one painting. And then they looked at it and said, we could fine tune it. But you see the whole salvation story from Adam and Eve being banished from the garden, the tabernacle, and Christ's baptism, the Last Supper, with Christ in the center. Different places, yeah.
From? Where are you coming from? She's from Ghana.
Ghana.
I live right here. Maryland?
Yes.
Kansas City? Kansas City.
It's dramatically different. But it was a pleasure to meet all of you
Thank
and
you
enjoy the
so
rest
much.
of your tour.
Okay. Welcome to the United States. We're going to start the tour this way. And this is like a museum for you to look around, to read all you want, to take pictures. And there are some electronic items for you can touch. There are two presentations. Well, 3. The other one is in the chapel. The first one is as introduction, and then you continue walking around. The first part is about Ellen White life, and the other on the hall is about her ministry, publishing ministry, education ministry, health ministry, and there is a timeline about the vision. There is about 3 occasions of Ellen White holding Bible in front of people. Well, she was only holding her preaching Bible, another Bible, but in vision, this was one. This belonged to her. This is the similar. You will see the actual in a display there. But this is for you to have an idea how big and heavy was that Bible. This the one she held was about 18.5 pounds. And she held the Bible for about 20 to 30 minutes. And we have a man, a strong man. We have a picture who held the actual her Bible for only 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Strong man. But she was about 20 to 30 minutes. So, at the end, if you want to try to hold this Bible.
Divine strength from God.
Yeah, correct. The Lord gave his strength. So come this way.
You have nothing to fear for the future.
Okay, this is to give you many of them were disfellowship for the Baptist Church, Methodist Church, all the churches. And so this group, they have no churches. So they meet in different places with the group was growing. So they have in houses. So this is a kind of barn they have at that time. And we try to imitate that to give you an idea of the humble beginning of the Advent movement. Many of the pioneers were farmers, so we have some tools here to illustrate what they have. And this wood is very old, more than 100 years old. But when you get out this area, you will see in that piece of wood that is there was taken from a real barn of 1848, just a piece. And that barn collapsed in 2010, and we got the piece in the 2014. So to have an idea, it's still very good wood because we still can touch and see that is. So this is very old, so we try to do our best to imitate the humble beginning. So the video, you can sit here and you're going to watch the presentation here.
John Quincy Adams was president. The first commercial railroad in America was chartered. Lead pencils were first mass-produced and slavery was abolished in New York State. That same year, in a small village in Gore, Maine, cries of twin baby girls filled their home with excitement. With 6 other children already in their family, Robert and Eunice Harmon were no strangers to the unexpected. Yet, little could they then know that one day, one of those girls would grow up to become the most translated female writer in history. Ellen and Elizabeth Harmon were born Monday, November 26, 1827, at a time when girls had few options in life. At the age of 9, Ellen survived a life-threatening head injury that ended her schooling and forever changed her life. A little over 3 years later in Portland, Maine, while listening to William Miller, a farmer-turned-preacher, Ellen's heart was thrilled with the thought that the Jesus she loved would come back to Earth in only a few years. But Jesus did not return in 1844 as expected. A few weeks later, while praying with 4 women, the 17-year-old Ellen received a vision from God. It brought encouragement and hope to many. But almost immediately, some questioned the claims, reputation, and even the sanity of the teenager. In 1846, Ellen married James White, a minister with only 41 weeks of formal education. The newlyweds, facing financial struggles, were forced to live with her parents for a while. With no money, but filled with youthful enthusiasm and a firm conviction about what God had shown her in vision, she urged her husband to start a paper that would allow them to share the truths that they with others had recently discovered through their study of the Bible. Despite the heart-wrenching deaths of 2 sons and later of her husband, Ellen remained true to the challenging and often difficult call to be the Lord's messenger. For generations, people in all parts of the world have discovered in Ellen White's thousands of articles and numerous books a source of knowledge and inspiration. They have also seen that her writings, rather than focusing on herself, always point to Jesus and His Word, the Bible. The profound concepts presented in Ellen White's writings, including those on health and education, are still powerful and relevant today. The desire to share the advantages of following her God-given principles has inspired Seventh-day Adventists to establish many publishing houses, schools, and hospitals throughout the world. Welcome to the Ellen G. White Visitor Center. Discover for yourself more about this unique gift that Christ has provided for His followers at the end of time.
true. Wait. Okay.
In an estimate of 40 books. But also she made compilations of her writings. So we have here about 70 books by collection, early writings, conflict of the ages, testimony for the church, devotional. In this screen we have more explanation of this book, but unfortunately today it's not working fine. I'm waiting for the technician to come and fix it. But you can see where those books were published. You see in 1911, 1898, and so. The background, you see the lot of letters there? This is the whole book Step to Christ. The whole book Step to Christ. Each 3 paragraphs of the book is in a different language. Each 3 paragraphs. So the book has 13 chapters. So 3 paragraphs of the book in a different language. So we have here 93 languages. 93 languages. The first one is English. You can find your language beside English. If you speak other language, you can find it. 93 languages. What other language do you speak?
Tagalog.
Did you find it? Look at this.
Do you have
closer.
Do you have the original design pages?
You have it?
Mamuhay ukol sa Diyos ay
Tanas ng
nakapagdang
mga panghalina na sa ate hikayat.
ang halina. Clear
Ellen G. White Estate commissioned Alfred Lee to paint a 30 by 8 foot mural based on Ellen White's first vision. The Christ of the Narrow Way was unveiled in 1991. Since then, it has been seen by thousands of visitors from all over the world. The story conveyed through this acrylic on canvas painting about a people focused on Christ and his return is powerful and increasingly important as the world seems, for many, to be racing toward random destruction. It all began more than 2,000 years ago when Christ unveiled the future to his prophet Daniel. And then at the opening of the 1800s, at the very time predicted, the religious world stirred with expectation. Sparking this increased spiritual interest was a renewed study of Bible prophecy, especially the books of Daniel and Revelation. In upstate New York, William Miller was studying the scriptures deeply. His Bible study led him and thousands of his followers to conclude that Daniel's 2300-day time prophecy, the longest recorded in the Bible, would end about 1844, at which time they believed Jesus would return to earth. But 1844 came and went, and Christ did not return. Why? What had they misunderstood? In December of 1844, 17-year-old Ellen Harmon was given the first of hundreds of visions and prophetic dreams that she would receive during the next 70 years until her death in 1915. In that first vision, she saw a narrow path with the people of God following Jesus toward the holy city. She saw that if they kept their eyes fixed upon Jesus, they would safely reach their heavenly home. Ellen Harmon's vision of the narrow path brought wonderful encouragement to the small group who clung tenaciously to God despite their tears of disappointment. They were motivated to go back to their Bibles. Here they discovered not only the reason for their disappointment, but also other long-forgotten truths of Scripture. In this group were two ministers, Joseph Bates, a former sea captain, and James White, whom Ellen Harmon married in 1846. In western New York State, Hiram Edson and his friends made an important discovery. As they studied their Bibles, they realized that instead of returning to earth in 1844 as they were expecting, Christ had entered the most holy place in the heavenly sanctuary. There he began to judge both the dead and the living prior to his return to earth. In another providential discovery, Joseph Bates and others realized the importance of keeping holy the Bible's Sabbath, the seventh day. Eager to share their findings, they started a little paper in 1849. Ellen White had been shown in vision that despite its humble beginning, this paper would become like streams of light encircling the world. In 1855, a small publishing house was established, the first of many to come. As the fledgling movement grew, the leaders realized their need to organize. In 1860, they chose the name Seventh-day Adventist, and in 1863, the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists was formed, with John Byington elected president. Once they were organized for mission, Ellen White was given a major vision encouraging Adventists to adopt a healthful lifestyle. It would not only enable them to share the gospel message more effectively, but it led the church, including individuals such as Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, to establish medical institutions around the world to help others enjoy better health based upon those God-given principles. Ellen White was shown that the work of education and redemption is one. True education goes beyond book knowledge. The physical, mental, and spiritual qualities of life should be combined as part of the process of education. In response, Adventists started schools at all levels to guide students to a better understanding of the Bible and God's creation, equipping them to share their faith through service to others. In 1874, the church sent J.N. Andrews to Europe as its first official missionary. A virtual explosion of mission endeavors followed, utilizing all forms of travel, from trains to planes, mules to motorcycles, and cars to ships, such as the Pitcairn, Morning Star, and Lucero. Since that modest beginning, many thousands have answered the call to service in Africa, Asia, the Americas, as well as the South Pacific. They have joined in sharing the end-time good news proclaimed by the three angels found in the book of Revelation, a message enriched in 1888 by a fresh emphasis on Christ and his gift of righteousness. What started as a movement in humble homes and small rural churches in the northeastern corner of the United States now encircles the globe. It is destined to end with even more power than when it began. The swelling call about Jesus' soon return is being announced by peoples of all races and nationalities, men and women, young and old, rich and poor. Each innovation in technology provides new and more effective methods for imparting the good news of our faith, from the printed page to radio and television to the internet. Today, you are invited to keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, and as part of his remnant people, to unite with him in finishing the mission. The mission of sharing the message of a soon coming Savior with all the world.
This is the draft of the decided
This is the draft.
Mm-hmm.
This is the actual Bible that she held for how many
This is
minutes?
the handwriting of Ellen White when she was 19 years old. In the other side, behind this painting, you will see her handwriting when she was old.
This is the Bible she held.
Mm-hmm.
For how many minutes?
For about 20 to 30 minutes, straight out left hand.
Left hand.
Mm-hmm.
In vision.
In vision. When the prophet or the people are in vision, they have supernatural strength. Yeah.
Yeah, she had a good picture.
The typewriter that in Russian they use this kind of typewriter to
Always
translate
visions were of supernatural.
in Russian. They make about 12 copies, carbon copies. They have to type very strong because you see later they made their own books. He was not allowed to publish to have freedom for the noise of the typewriter from Russia that they use in that time to share the message with other people. This is for you to take picture with the White family. In the back. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. So this is a good testimony. Okay, this is about two grandchildren of Ellen White and two more people who met Ellen White, talking about her as a person, not as a messenger. So you will hear many details about her as a person. That's in her house in California, in Haven. You will learn a lot, listen to them about
In
them.
the early morning hours of darkness, when the prosperous Napa Valley was still asleep. This room often glowed with a warm light, as God's messenger sat alone, writing letters, articles, and books. But what about Ellen as a person? Because she devoted so little of her creative talents to autobiography, the many facets of her personality and lifestyle are relatively unknown. But fortunately, there's a small number of Adventists whose memories stretch back to the early years of this century who can say, yes, I remember Ellen White. One fact becomes immediately obvious. Ellen loved her Lord and His Word supremely.
My name is Evelyn Grace. They wanted me to have the same initials as grandmother, but I didn't keep the white too long. The Sabbaths that we enjoyed the most was the Sabbaths when grandmother was going to speak, maybe in Napa or Calistoga, or some of the churches that would take an early morning drive. We went with horse and carriage then. We got up early. My mother would know Friday before that grandmother was going to speak somewhere else, and she would put up a nice lunch. Now, we could have been invited to people's homes, but when Ellen White spoke, she used a great deal of energy, and she needed to relax after she spoke, which she could do with the family and not with strangers or in other people's homes. So we would take a nice lunch, and if it was a warm day, we'd find a place by a stream that was nice and shady. We'd unhitch the horse, spread our blankets and quilts and cushions, and put down the tablecloth, and Mother would have a nice lunch for us.
And there was especially, I remember in going to Healdsburg, where the road was so narrow, you know, by the creek there.
Mother never liked it.
We always held our breath because there was no way of passing. If a team came, well, it just wasn't too good, and backing a team of horses on a narrow road isn't much fun.
We loved to hear her speak, and she used a great deal of energy when she spoke. You didn't go to sleep when Ellen White spoke.
It was so unusual to hear a woman, see a woman at that age with such a wonderful voice, penetrating voice, and musical voice. It was remarkable.
Yes, I knew Sister White in this way. I heard her preach once and saw her, of course. It was in Boulder, Colorado, at the camp meeting in 1909. In a building with an iron roof right at the base of the Red Rocks there. It's on the campus of the University of Colorado. And she was there. I suppose there were 200 Adventists, and maybe the rest of 1,000 people or 800 people were just people of the town, people of various denominations, wanted to see the Adventist front. I can remember when she came on the grounds in a surrey drawn by 2 horses, and Willie White, her son, was with her, and Miss McIntyre, her companion and nurse. And the meeting that night, she preached to us. I was sitting at her left hand, about, 15 feet from her. Could see her plainly, of course, right there. Platform was about a foot and a half high. And she had this big, thick Bible. She was preaching faithfully, giving God's message. And I was interested. It was interesting. She was just a dear, sweet Christian mother or grandmother telling us what we ought to do. Just as she started to talk to finish off, it started to rain on that iron roof, and you can imagine. Now remember, no amplifiers in those days, except you carried your amplifier with you. And she had a regular preaching voice, and you know, from this conversational tone or voice that she'd been using, she went into her real preaching voice. And you could hear her voice just like a silver bell right through all of that confusion caused by that rain. She could talk right through the rain noise. And then she talked just about a minute, and then she kneeled down to pray. She told her son, I must pray for us. And she came over on my side of the platform and kneeled down to pray. I can hear her now. She said, not our Father, but oh, my Father. And from that moment on, it was a personal communion between her and the Heavenly Father. In just a minute or two, there seemed to be a mighty power come over that meeting. Now, I felt it. I was just a boy. And I was a member of the church. I'd been baptized about a year and a half before. And I could feel that power until finally I was afraid to look up for fear I'd see God standing out there by. She was talking with him. She'd forgotten all about us. And she was in the presence of the Lord. And a minute or two more went by, and that whole crowd, you could hear them weeping, crying over their sin. A tremendous revival, really. Spiritual revival, the mighty power of God. When she preached, God blessed her as a preacher, but when she began to pray, he honored her as his prophet before the people. I'll never forget it.
And in a group like a group of the family, she didn't talk a great deal. She didn't dominate a room as you might think she might. She took part in conversation. She was not a recluse, but she did not dominate the situation. She just enjoyed being with her family.
Everyone enjoyed eating at Ellen White's table. It was a well-supplied table with fruits and grains and vegetables and nuts, many of the products of her own home farm here. No tea or coffee was served there. No meat was served there. Meals were served at 7 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then if individuals cared to do so, they could go to the pantry in the evening and get a light supper.
One day, a young man came to the front door all alone, a very fine boy, so Miss McIntyre told me, and she was agreeably impressed with him, asked him a few questions, and she liked the boy. And he would like to know if he could have a little visit, short visit with Sister White, and if possible to have a little lunch with her. So Sister White agreed. Sister McIntyre agreed. She was a very cautious woman about some things. And so he came in, and noon time they sat at the table, and they enjoyed it, and they had a little chat, and Sister White spoke to the boy and asked questions and so on and so on. And we came to dessert time, and they had, I think it was lemon pie. And they soon discovered that the cook had made a little mistake, because, you know, sugar and salt look very much alike. And it happened to be salt, and a little too much salt in the lemon pie. But they ate it, and didn't advertise it, didn't make any remarks over it. And Sister White, knowing boys, you understand, she raised two boys to manhood, and decided to give this boy her piece, and she pushed it over. So he had 2 pieces of pie, well salted. And so afterwards they had a little laugh over it.
Well, she would drive through the countryside, and if she knew of a family that was in need, they would take fruit or breadsticks, something to show that she was neighborly and thinking of them. There were nearly 2,000 fruit trees on grandmother's land. We sent some fruits to Fiji, and I remember we even sent some to Russia. And lots of prunes.
What did they do with the prunes?
Well, they dried them. How? Of course, you had to pick them up first.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which you didn't like to do. Doctor couldn't see any prunes. So I picked up a little pathway to the middle of the prune tree, make it like a
I remember that.
pie,
Yeah.
slice of pie, and I said, now can you see that? And you thought you could. So I said, pick them up. So he did. And that would make about a quarter of a bucket full. And then you'd sit in the top of the bucket and tell jokes. And you'd laugh so hard at your own jokes that you'd fall over and spill them all out. by that time, my patience is worn out.
And what did you do?
I got a little switch, and I said, you pick up this fruit. Kind of a hard task, I said,
Yes,
but you love me just the same.
I didn't, I still do.
Oh,
Have you ever wondered how Ellen made her clothes appear attractive and feminine? Photographs of the early 1900s lack enough clarity to answer such questions, let alone reveal whether the subject was serene or quick-tempered, somber or quick-witted.
I once was bold enough to ask if any here, Miss McIntyre and so on, ever heard Sister White scold anyone? Or was she ever upset, as we say, frustrated, disturbed? And the answers were all no.
well, just once that I remember personal advice for me was when I was a teenager. My closest friend was one of the doctor's daughters, and she had nicer clothes than I had, which didn't bother me very much, except I wanted them as short as hers were. They came to her knees, not quite. And we were visiting grandmother, my mother and I, and she looked at me, and we were standing by her chair there, her writing chair, and she looked at me and she said, May, Grace is getting to be a big girl now. Her dresses should be a little longer. And that's the last thing I wanted. I wanted them to stay short, like my friends' dresses, but they got longer. She had a silver pin with a little flower engraved in it, and little silver knobs all around it to decorate it. She also had a cameo. She had several pins that she used. She did not seem to be against, what shall I say, utilitarian jewelry, if you could call it that. I wouldn't really call it jewelry or not, but she was not against that. She also wore her watch, which was a Swiss watch, and they made a little pocket in her coat for it. And there was a chain made of her own hair that they in Switzerland wove for her. The end was silver with a few silver links, then her own hair, and then the little chain went through and then over into the pocket on the side. That sort of broke the monotony in the front of her dress, but she did have all these little buttons down the front and a nice brooch at the throat. We were always interested because the clothes were black. These gray buttons, but of course they turned gray later. Well, one of them had a little coat, and her mother wanted to see it, but it was raining. And as she was preparing to go, Miss McIntyre said, "Oh, you mustn't go out, Mother." Now, Miss McIntyre was no relation, but she called her mother. "You'll get your feet wet." "Oh," she said, "I have my galoshes." "Yes, but it's raining. You'll get wet." "Well, I have a raincoat and an umbrella." And whatever Miss McIntyre said, Grandmother had a good answer for her. And she went out and saw.
She wasn't easily stopped when she...
Well, she wasn't afraid of snow or rain.
She prided herself at the age of 83 of being able to climb these stairs as readily as any member of her household.
Well, Brother James told me that she was, as he put it, the soul of wit. That she never was silly anything, but she really was quick on the trigger and seeing points, and laughing about it. And she believed a good laugh was good for the soul as well as for the body. And she'd pick up things quickly, and if you look for it, you can see a shadow of it in her writings in some places.
Ellen White loved trees. She loved particularly this old live oak tree. It grew to a point where the branches spread clear out almost to the house. And one day my father came out of the office door and noticed that his mother was standing by the open window looking out at the tree pensively, and
He came over to the window and he said, "Mother, what is it?" He thought perhaps she was heavily burdened with some problem, and
she said, "Well, Willie, I was just wondering whether we were going to have to move the house or whether we were going to have to move the tree."
that is when you get through speaking, you go out and the people stand and talk and stand and talk and pretty wear you out. And the kids were getting a little bit rambunctious. and a bit restless, and someone mentioned something about their stubbornness, and James White looked over at Ellen and said to the people, well, you can see where they got it. And she responded, well, at least I didn't keep it like you did. And so... no, I never heard that one. You never heard that one?
Books and magazine articles, letters of encouragement and guidance came from Ellen's pen in an incredible volume. In all, over 25 million words. What human mind could generate such a library with total unity of thought? The answer lies in the source of her inspiration, visions from God.
About 2,000 visions were given to Ellen White during her 70 years of service. In the earlier years, these were often accompanied by physical phenomena. In the later years, the visions were usually given during the hours of the night. And the visions given to her in this home, and many of them were usually the visions of the night. It was in this room that Ellen White did very much of her writing. She would come to this room early in the morning, sometimes at midnight. Seldom did she remain in bed resting after a vision was given to her. So coming to the room, she would, after stirring up the fire and having a word of prayer, would be seated in a chair, equipped with this lap board, and would do her writing in this corner, and she loved this corner. The story has grown up that when Ellen White was in vision, there was a supernatural light which could be seen from outside of the windows, but this is not sustained in fact at all. But working in this room, very early in the morning, during those long, hard hours, when the nurses at the sanitarium found it difficult to work, they could look out of the windows where they were, or the porch at the sanitarium, and see a light in Ellen White's writing room, in this window over there, or this window here. And it was the lamplight, of course, in the room to supply her needs, and it gave them a good feeling. Sister White was working too during those hard hours. They could work.
This particular evening, when she retired early to her bedroom, she asked that the Lord would give her a good night's rest, although she felt very uncomfortable at the time herself. Her neuritis was bothering her, and her heart was acting up. And so she prayed the Lord would give her rest. When she first went to her bed, she turned this way and that way, trying to get her arm comfortable, but didn't seem to be able to succeed for some time. Finally, about probably 9 o'clock, she went to sleep, slept for a little while, and then waking, as we all do, to turn and move, she thought now she must move carefully so that the arm didn't hurt. And let it start hurting again. But as she moved, she had a sensation of lightness. Not as the pain was gone, there was no pain. So she moved again, carefully, this way and that, and still the feeling of lightness persisted. And she thought that was wonderful that the pain was gone, because it had been bothering her very much. And then as she was thinking about it, how wonderful that was, she noticed the room filling with a beautiful light, a beautiful azure light. Well, that's kind of a blue, isn't it? Filling with a beautiful azure light. And as she was wondering what that might mean, a voice said, "Fear not, I am your Savior. Heavenly angels are all about you." Well, she thought, heavenly angels are all about me. I must be in heaven. That's wonderful. No more messages to give, no more misunderstanding to endure. Now I can be at rest. She had a wonderful feeling of restfulness and peace. The voice said, "Your work is not yet finished." So she knew she wasn't in heaven.
When we think of Ellen, a number of titles come spontaneously to mind. Messenger, writer, prophet. But would anyone ever claim she was perfect, above mistakes? The Bible records the shortcomings of its heroes and heroines. And history records there were occasions when Ellen looked back and felt she had made errors in judgment, in contrast with errors in counsel.
One time James Ellen White had their pictures taken, and they were to go into a book, The Eminent Self-Made Men of Michigan, in 1878. They paid for the steel engravings and so on. Later, they felt that they had used money perhaps that should have been used in some other way, and they published a confession in a review.
For 15 years, Helen, her son Willie, and his family lived in the town of St. Helena, California. As their homes were a mere 3-minute walk apart, the lives of all were intimately entwined. Memories of Friday evening worship in grandmother's home are still crystal clear to Grace and Arthur, as also are the morning worships in their own home.
So we usually had enough to have part singing, and Ellen White was very fond of music. We were just as quiet as worship as we were in church. Not a word. And then my father would tell stories of the older days, or sometimes there would be a returned missionary staying over the weekend, and they would tell the stories about their experiences. Then after worship, we sung a hymn. Then we'd each get our Bibles and we studied the Sabbath school lesson. Then we could ask questions. Then we could move about, and we each took turns reading, answering a question. So we were involved in the after activity. And for the younger ones, they played Bible games, and the adults played with them. We all did the same thing together. The little folks sat still while the adults had what they enjoyed, and then they joined in with the activities that we enjoyed. And we never pushed off into the corner. They were always a unit, a family, doing things together. Mother said to my father, well, we'll have a short worship this time, because it's a little late and the children have to be to school. And they had breakfast still, you see. So he said, my father's very deliberate. He said, I shall read a song. So Mother just sat down. You know, he's going to do what he wants to do. So he read the psalm that has 2 verses. Oh, with that we had a wonderful time on Christmas. We took us weeks preparing the things we children at our house. The Christmas trees were always at our house because there was always so much company here, and there wasn't a room that could be set off for just a Christmas tree. And we went out into the woods and found the best tree we could find, the most perfect one. It took us days down through the woods to find it. We had to go through grandmother's forest, and we also had access to some of the others that you do not now. And when we get just the tree that we like, then we mark it. And then when it was nearly Christmas time, we cut it and bring it and put it in the 3rd floor bedroom upstairs, which was 12 feet high in the ceiling. And the tree went to the ceiling.
As Ellen came to the close of her life, she did all she could to see that her personal finances were left in good order. But she had given so generously there was little left, despite the considerable royalties from her books over a span of 70 years. When her will was probated in Napa Court, a 3-man committee was assigned to assess the value of the estate. It was the manuscripts that found most difficult to value.
When my father, W.C. White, opened the vault door and said, gentlemen, here are the manuscripts, here are the records of the book properties, they didn't know what to do. They had to think in terms of what could you sell this for tomorrow at an auction. And so while there was a very large investment there, they just arbitrarily wrote down $40,000. And this, with the other assets, made some $64,000 in actual assets, and there were obligations of $96,000.
The General Conference advanced money to the White estate to pay off the debts and charged a reasonable interest rate on the loan. Over the years, the book royalties have more than cared for this expense.
There are royalties paid on the E.G. White books today. These royalties, by agreement, are the property of the General Conference. There is no member of the White family that benefits as much as 5 cents a year from the fact that Ellen G. White was an author. I was 7 years old when she died, and the event that stands out most clearly in my mind was her death and her funeral.
When the funeral came on, some of the very people to whom she went to visit and pray, they were at the funeral. Miss Macintyre ever told me that we would come in the side door of the house and go out through the parlor, out through the front door. Once, twice, some of them 3 times. And she questioned me about it. Well, we just wanted to see once more the face of the dear old lady who came to our home to talk so nicely about the coming of Jesus and to give us literature and flowers and so on and so on.
A personality of such wide influence and varied responsibilities as Ellen White can hardly be evaluated in a few words. But there was one fact that lay at the foundation of all her work. It was her continual dependence on the Bible. This was evident wherever she spoke, from the largest camp meeting to daily worship in her own home.
We would come in and sit down quietly, and then we'd hear those footsteps coming down the stairs. And she'd come and sit in this chair that I'm sitting in. That was her chair. And she would take the Bible. She knew just what she wanted to read. There was no time lost. There was no hurry, no stress. But she would just reverently take the Bible and read something that she knew we children would enjoy. Now, I never remember her reading anything but the Bible for worship time.
All through the following 14 years, or maybe 12, when she was out in the field here in California, at camp meetings, general meetings, here and there, even in committee meetings, she carried her Bible and would use the Bible first before she taught.
She, in 1903, wrote that little heed is given to the Bible, and the Lord has given a lesser light to lead men and women to the greater light. She knew her Bible, and she made use of it, and she accepted it as the prime source of light. But as promised in the Bible, the Lord had given visions in our times to lead us to that word and to help us apply its principles.
Whenever I hear anyone say something like this, oh yes, Sister White did, past tense, a great work, I invariably say, my friend, Sister White not only did a great work, but she's doing a greater work today.
But she had written, whether or not my life is spared, my writings will constantly speak, and their work will go forward as long as time shall last.
Through the memories of Ellen's contemporaries, there emerges a portrait of a delightful Christian woman. One who was warm in her personal contacts, ever thoughtful of others' feelings. One who had a keen sense of humor, and was proud to walk the stairs of her home unaided, even at the age of 80 years. One who was always ready to help a neighbor, generous and full of faith in the Lord's work, thrifty and industrious in her own home, but above all, totally committed to her task as the Lord's messenger, and totally convicted of his imminent return. She has been at rest for some decades, but her writings continue to speak.
Okay, so you watched the whole video. Very good.
You might drop it.
Like this is the sample, how to hold it.
Here's how to hold it.
Yeah, this is the guy who 2 minutes.
Extra weak.
You can do it.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah.
Like that.
Not pendant.
Yeah.
No, I can't do it.
Before I
Hindi mo magawa.
This is so hard.
Like that.
I can't even
You
stand
can
up
even
my
stand.
arms. I can't stand that.
Is her White healthy for how many minutes?
20 to 30 minutes.
20 to 30 minutes.
Between 20 to 30 minutes.
Higher.
How many times?